Let's move on to chapter 19, which is the chapter which really God prepares the people of Israel to encounter God. In verses 3 to 6 of chapter 19, we see that the purpose of the Exodus, of God taking the people of Israel, is to make them a people, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, and a special treasure to God. So to make them people who will be precious to God, who will be a kingdom of priests who can serve God, and who can be a holy nation, a nation set apart from God, for God. So let's read from chapter 19, verse 3. Moses went up to God, and the Lord called him from the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, you see what I've done to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel." So God's purpose in taking Israel is that they should be a special people to him, a people who he can speak through, who will be an example of the people who are the Lord's people, who are a holy nation and a kingdom of priests. Notice that there is a condition in this. He says, "Then if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant." And when we come to the covenant which God makes with Israel at Mount Sinai, there is a condition on whether it's going to be a blessing or a curse. A blessing if they're obedient, a curse, a judgment if they're disobedient. So there's a call here to be that holy nation, a nation which can follow the Lord. When we look to the New Testament, we see that God actually applies this to the church as well, his people, who are to be a holy nation, a kingdom of priests, and a special treasure to God. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 says, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but now are the people of God, who have not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy." So God's purpose for you and me, as believers in Jesus the Messiah, is that we should be that people who can proclaim the mercies of God, who can proclaim the truth about God, and can be people who have been called out of darkness into his light, his own special people, also be a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. And we see that Paul also prayed for the church in Ephesus, saying, praying that they would know what are the riches of his glory and his inheritance in the church. Which tells us that you might think you're very important to God, but God actually sees immense value in you and in me as people, and each one of us as we belong to Jesus. And he wants us to be that people who will reflect something of his nature to the world, so that people can say that they can't say there's no God, because they can see that their God is at work amongst his people, and that his people are a representative of him to proclaim the praises of God and to bring his message to the people in the world. We see also, as far as we're concerned, also there is a condition. If we obey my voice and keep my covenant, that we have to walk in faith and obedience to the Lord. And we see that in this case, the people agree to it. Verse 7 of chapter 19, Moses comes and puts this proposition to them, if you like. So Moses came and called for the elders of the people, laid before them all these words which the Lord commanded him. Then all the people answered together and said, "All that the Lord has spoken we will do." So Moses brought back the words of the people to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I come to you in the thick cloud, and the people may hear when I speak to you and believe you forever." So Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. So the people respond to the call of God through Moses, saying, "All that the Lord has said we will do." Later on, they're going to say, "All that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient." Do you think they meant it? Yeah, I think they did. And I think there is a desire to please God, to do what he wants. Did they do it? Much of the time, no. And of course, this comes up to the problem of human nature, the problem of the Torah, that we can see that here is the standard which God wants us to live by, but we all fall short of it, and we need someone to be our mediator to redeem us from the fact that we fall short of the glory of God and don't do what God tells us to do. Which brings us on to Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah. But their intention at this point was, yes, what the Lord has said we will do. And that's actually an important part of the covenant, because they had to agree to it. They had to agree to God's terms and to put them into practice. The next thing which happens, we see, is that God actually comes down onto the mountain. And the description which we have in Exodus is of God coming with tremendous power and presence, a terrifying power actually, as he comes with his glory and appears on the mountain before the people. And he also sets bounds around the mountain so that they don't come up too close. And this again illustrates a certain principle about God's dealing with the human race. Exodus 19 verse 14 then says, so Moses went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes, said to the people, be ready for the third day, do not come near your wives. Then it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunderings and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain, and the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of the furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long and became louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him by voice. Then the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people, lest they break through to gaze at the Lord, and many of them perish. And also let the priests who come near the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. But Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, set bounds around the mountain and consecrate it. Then the Lord said to him, away, get down, and then come up, you and Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. If you can imagine, if you were there, that would have been a pretty awe-inspiring sight, wouldn't it? You see the mountain quaking with fire and thunderings and blast of a trumpet, which obviously was a supernatural trumpet. There was no one blowing it, but you could hear this tremendous sound taking place. People would have been terrified, wouldn't they? Would you have been terrified? I guess you would. The presence of the Lord was there. And they knew that they were encountering the living God. He was coming down with tremendous power to give his commandments to the people. And God was speaking to them. And he set bounds around the mountain. Why did he set the bounds around the mountain? Well, because God is holy and God is powerful, and we are not holy and we are not powerful. And if the people had come out of God's will and encountered God, they would have been put to death. They would have died. And so Moses tells them to keep away, not to get near. And they put bounds around the mountain and they consecrate it. They consecrate it to the Lord. And they're also told to be ready to meet with the Lord. And we should also be ready to meet with the Lord. Matthew 24, Jesus says, you also be ready. Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect him. And we need to be ready at all times to meet with the Lord, either in death or at his second coming, and to be ready to meet with God so that we are ready to be with him. And they set up a barrier again because God is holy and we are not. And this reminds us that there is a barrier between us and God because of sin. And we need a way to cross that barrier. And we have to come to God on his terms, not on ours. And this is one of the problems which the human race has. We say we want to come to God on our terms. We don't really want God to make up the rules. Let's make up the rules ourselves. Let's do it our way. Doesn't matter how we live, we can still come to God. We can do it our way. Happened to tune in to the funeral of Captain Tom the other day. I mean, now that Captain Tom who raised all the money, I'm not saying he did a good thing. He was trying to help people. But I was rather saddened to see that one of the songs which he'd chosen for his funeral was I Did It My Way. Apparently that's one of the most popular songs which people choose for funerals to sing, I Did It My Way. It's the very last song you should have at a funeral, because if you choose for a funeral, because if you're going to a funeral, you're about to meet with God. And if you meet with God and say, I did it my way, you're going to say that's no good. If you did it my way, you did it the wrong way. And that's actually the problem of the human race, that we try and do it our way, and we think that if we do it our way, we're going to meet with God. God says, no, you've got to do it my way, God's way. And very last song which I would choose to have at a funeral is I Did It My Way. I want to say I did it God's way. Bible says there's a way that seems right unto man, but the end of it is the way of death. And Jesus says, enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction. There are many that go in by it. Narrow is the gate and difficult is the way that leads to life, and there are few that find it. If we want to come to God, we've got to come God's way. And God says, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. And God sets bounds around himself, and he chooses the way in which we should access him. We can't choose it. And if we go it our way, we're doing it the wrong way.